We did a ton. Just to preface that trip too. Every year for the last couple of years, I've had a tradition where I go camping for my birthday, and this year was like the first year that I was away from home. I didn't have the same friend group, and I was working a ton. I was working probably 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, and that was the only consistent time off that I took. Like throughout the summer, I was like, hey, like I need 5 days off from work, and I'm gonna go backpacking. And as I started to figure out this trip, I was like mentioning bits and pieces of it to people that I was working with, and they're like, "Bro, are you crazy?" Like just the way that we planned it. Um, so I planned this trip over my birthday because I figured it would be something kind of special to me, and I organized it. I had to get permits from the national park because it's a national park. They don't want just millions of people camping everywhere. So I had to do research on how to get permits, where to get permits, where we're going to go. And there's this really iconic place in Denali National Park called Wonder Lake. And we have a really big panoramic photo of it in the hotel that I was working at. And I would pass by it, stand in front of it every single day. And people would come up to me in the hotel and they'd be like, hey, where is that? Like, I want to go there. And I'd tell them, you can't go there. Because for a lot of people that don't know, last September in 2021, there was a huge landslide in the national park. And they've known about it. They knew it was happening. And then it just pretty much just collapsed. And from talking to the park rangers all summer, it's going to take 5 or 6 years to build a new road. And they're estimating it's going to be about $1 billion project to put a new road. Because, yeah, it's so, I don't know if it's just remote or just like because of the way that the landscape is in Alaska. It's hard to build anything like that after it goes out. And I said, I'm not going to let that stop me. And so I called around to some of the airlines or like small businesses in the area and found one that they fly people in and out of the park. Because, fun fact, there's actually some hotels in the back of the park that were old mining settlements before they expanded the boundaries in the national park. And so, because people technically owned that land before as a national park, they claimed it from the United States government, and then they ended up either selling it or just passing it along to their kids, and their kids turned it into a hotel. And so it became like resorts back there too, like very few people back there as well. But this company was flying people in and out. A lot of it was those people staying at the hotels, and they actually told us that we're the only people that they flew out all summer to go backpacking
That's
back
pretty
there.
cool.
Yeah, so it felt really special. We had a weight limit. I invited a couple people. I had two friends that lived with me and worked with me that they wanted to come, and then I thought we'd actually have room for two more people, but it turns out we only had room for one. And good thing I only had one person actually be super serious about going, and that was Bryce. I'd never met him in person, only talked on social media, and he decided that he actually wanted to do it. And for anybody that doesn't know where Bryce is from Charleston, South Carolina, which is further than Utah. And so he flew from Charleston, South Carolina, all the way to Fairbanks, where he caught the Alaska Railroad, and he rode the train all the way down. And I met him in person a day before this trip, and he just decided that he was all in. And he literally bought his plane ticket like 3 days before he got out there, and he just fully committed to it. And we decided to send it. He paid for his flights just to get to Alaska, and then we had to pay the company to fly us in and out of the park. And it was actually pretty nice because some of the companies that I work with, Teton Sports, I'm an ambassador for them. I had quite a bit of camping gear from them, so we didn't have to worry about buying any additional camping gear really. And then we also, I reached out to Peak Refuel. I have a friend that works for them, and I was like, hey man, like, is there anybody that you can hook me up with here just to reach out to and see if they'd send some product out for some photos? And ended up getting them to send me a very, very large amount of backpacking meals, like enough for all four of us to eat food for the 4 days that we were out there. And so, really, the only cost for me, at least, not talking for Bryce, just to get out there was just the cost of the plane to get out there. And there's a lot of things that we had to do. We had to get a special certification before we could go backpacking in the park to be able to get our permit. And we just decided to send it. And they dropped us off at the Kantishna airport, and we loaded up all our gear. They had other people get in the plane to take back out, and those people were staying at the hotel, and they saw us all with our backpacks, and they're like, "You guys aren't staying at a hotel here?" We're like, "No, we're going backpacking." And they're like, "That's crazy." And one of the ladies that like was working at the backcountry hotel was like, "You guys are probably the only people that I've seen out here this whole year too." And this was in July, and it just was a crazy experience. We hiked from the Kantishna airport on the park road on the other side of the closure, and we probably hiked 6 miles on this road until we got to Wonder Lake, because you actually can drive up to it when the park road is open, but it's a no camp zone. And so we actually had to hike about 2 miles up a hill, and that's where we set up camp, because it was outside of the no camp zone. And so we camped there. We camped there for 2 nights, and there actually was no water up there, so we had to come down every single day to get water, which honestly wasn't bad because we wanted to hang out at the lake every day too. So we did that. And the second day that we were out there, or actually the third day we decided this is too far up. We're doing too much bushwhacking to get up there, covered in cuts and scrapes and bruises and mud, because we were literally pushing tree branches out of the way and walking through shrubs for 2 miles, just straight uphill. Like, it probably was 2,500 feet of elevation gain, and we just decided we'd had enough of it. And so we decided to pack up all our stuff and head back down, and we just spent our last day at the lake, and then we decided we were going to spend our last night camping somewhere more not so high in elevation before we went back. And that last day was July 28th, and we kind of just went down. We hung out by the lake, and there was actually some people from one of the other hotels out there canoeing. And I probably shouldn't be admitting this on video or on audio, but I asked them, I said, "Hey, like, is there any way that I could like use one of your guys' canoes? Like, this looks like super fun." And the guy was really nice about it, and he told me, "Hey man, like, I really appreciate you asking, but no, I can't let you do it. Like, it's a liability for our company." And I don't know if he said that just because he had to, but they left, and they didn't lock the canoe up before they left. I don't know if he did that on purpose. And so it was around midnight, and we decided we were going to take it out. And so we took the canoe out, and we just kind of canoed on Wonder Lake as the sun was setting at midnight. And fun fact, it actually like carried over into my birthday. So I was sitting on a lake watching a sunset on my birthday in the middle of nowhere, in a place that nobody else went backpacking, doing probably one of the coolest trips that I've ever been on when I turned 19. And we just kind of hung out. Like, we cooked food, and Peak Refuel has some awesome meals. I wasn't expecting some of them to be that good, but compared to some other MREs that we had out there as well, it was like, holy cow, this is like eating at McDonald's and then going out to like a really fancy dinner restaurant. And so we just hung out. Like, we took photos, we played cards, just spent time in nature. We had some crazy wildlife experiences too. We saw a huge bull moose in Wonder Lake, and we sat and watched it for 2 hours. And I ended up, I was taking photos of it, and then I ended up walking back to everybody where they were sitting, and we hear rustling in the branches, and this moose pops out of like a shrub or a tree, and it's probably 30 feet away from us and walking right towards us. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And he just kept coming towards us. And then we realized, okay, he's getting too close. Like, this is a huge, dangerous wild animal. And so we decided it's time to go. and we started walking up the mountain. I was taking photos still, partially as it was walking towards us, and I was like, okay, this is getting too close. And so I started booking it, and he started running, but not running towards us. He was paralleling us, and he just was like, I mean, I guess it was a casual walk for him because he has 4 legs and he's fast, but it was crazy to have this ginormous moose with big antlers 10, 15 feet away from you, just running and just walking into the woods, paying no attention to you, really. He was aware that we were there, but he wasn't like coming after us, which we thought he was at first. And so that was probably one of the craziest experiences of the trip. I'm just glad it was a moose and not a bear. We also found some caribou right next to our camp, and me and my buddy Roman stayed up till 2 in the morning just watching these caribou just graze. And then they ended up just walking off into the sunset, and we're like, okay, it's time to go to bed. And then just went to bed, and it just like felt so unnatural because it felt like a dream, and it just was a crazy experience. And then we loaded up into an airplane and flew back and spent the night in the hotel room of the hotel that I worked at. And it just still kind of seems unbelievable because that's something that nobody else has done. And Bryce actually made some really cool stickers that are, one of them is on my water bottle, and it says, I backpacked Unit 15, and it has like a mountain and an airplane, just to kind of like signify like our really cool trip that we had to fly into this national park, and we got to see Mount Denali with no clouds around it too. That's one of the things I forgot to mention is the first 2 days it was cloudy and we couldn't really see the peak, and then the last 2 days it was super clear, and you get to see like the true size and beauty of this ginormous mountain. And then we flew home right past it, and we had this really cool pilot. His name was Roger, and Roger had been flying airplanes for 30 years. And we got to know Roger, and Roger was really cool, and he was pointing out some places to us, and we flew over Wonder Lake, and we pointed out to him where we camped at on top of this ridgeline that just took 4 hours to get up to every time. And he said, I won't use the vulgar language that he did, but he said, you guys are freaking crazy. I've never heard of anybody camping up there. And it was like, really? Like, that's crazy. And I don't know. It just was worth it to us, I guess. And it just was the trip of a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an incredible experience. I mean, listening to you tell that story, I'm like, I need to do something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be super cool.
Yeah.
And like, what was that like to do all of that with people you really don't know all that well?
It was fun because experiences like that is how you get to know people really well. Like, I mean, if you threw me in a room like here with people that I didn't know, I'm a pretty outgoing person, so I probably would make some effort, but I'd probably be on my phone a lot too because sometimes it's awkward. But we didn't do that. We just all talked and we got to know each other, and we played cards, and we didn't care what we each thought about each other. And I don't know why that is, but we just weren't afraid of all the other things that come with a normal social life or like cultural norms. Like, we just shared about ourselves, and we just were our quirky own personalities, and we just kind of bonded. And so it felt like I'd known those people for a long time, especially Bryce. Like, literally had known him for a day, and he ended up spending like a week with us in Alaska, and I felt like I'd known him for like a decade by the time he left.
That's amazing. And I think like that's obviously nowhere near to that extent, because your trip, your backpacking trip, is far different than what we do on a more regular basis here. But to some degree, I think we get a little bit of that as well. I mean,
100%.
the trip that we did back in the spring, like,
Yeah.
that was the first trip we'd really done with you.
Yeah.
And that was right before you left for Alaska.
Yeah.
But I mean, that trip and everyone in our group there, like, we bonded really well.
Yeah.
And to this day, that's of all the trips we've done, a lot of people said that's like their favorite trip. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things like it'd be so fun to be able to go back and relive all of those moments.
Yeah.
And again, being able to do that in Alaska would take that to the next level.
Yeah. Doing it almost anywhere, but I think that that is one of the things that I've noticed is you can take a lot, you can take strangers and you can make them do something together that they have somewhat in common. I mean, a lot of us are photographers, a lot of us are videographers, but you don't have to be a photographer or a videographer to come hang out with us. We just all love being outside and we like getting to know people and we like having experiences or adventures. And so that is just common ground for everybody. And that's how you make friends. And that's how you break those barriers of what makes you different. It doesn't matter to the bushwhackers, to us, what is different about you, because we're gonna love you either way, and we have something that is in common. And so I think that helps us all kind of make friends and enjoy our time together.